Chapter 21. The End of the Chamber of Secrets and the Light of the Soil. The basilisk's hellish hiss pierced their minds like an ice pick. Cedric and Hagrid froze instantly, faces drained of color, fear tightening their throats. A cold, bone-deep dread crept up Jongwoo's spine as well, but the vast reservoir of spiritual power inside her and the protective force of the Azure Rain wand flared at once, forming an invisible barrier that barely held back the crushing pressure that struck at their souls. "Run!" Jiangwu screamed, her voice sharp and carrying with an authority that snapped Cedric out of his paralysis. She no longer held back. Fully channeling her spiritual power, she surged forward with breathtaking speed, yanking Cedric along. The two of them tore across the cold night like gusts of wind, making for the castle gates. Hagrid's massive form sprang into motion too. He thundered back toward his hut and slammed the door shut behind him. Slowly, like a tide ebbing, the suffocating aura from the depths of the Forbidden Forest receded and did not follow. Still, the cold hiss and the shadow of death had been burned into all three of them. Back at the castle, a shaken Cedric and Hagrid were immediately taken aside for questioning by Professor McGonagall and other teachers who had rushed over when the alarm was raised. Jongwoo kept her story simple. She had heard strange noises, seen a tide of spiders, and felt a terrifying presence. She omitted the Marauder's map and her mother's warnings about a basilisk. McGonagall's face went ashen. She ordered the castle entrances fortified and sent professors to patrol through the night. No one slept peacefully. The next day brought explosive news. Harry Potter and Ron Weasley had solved the Chamber of Secrets. They had found the true entrance in Myrtle's bathroom, entered the chamber, and Harry had personally killed the basilisk with Gryffindor's sword. The petrified, Hermione among them, would recover once the mandrakes matured and their restorative potion was applied. The culprit had been revealed, Ginny Weasley, manipulated by a mysterious diary, and the diary's author was Tom Riddle, Lord Voldemort in his youth. The dark cloud that had hung over Hogwarts for months finally broke. Relief swept the castle. Dumbledore resumed his duties as headmaster. Madame Pomfrey was busy applying mature mandrake potion to the petrified students. Quietly, Jongwoo went to visit Hermione. The girl was pale, but breathing steadily. Jong laid a spirit-calming jade, sent by her father and infused with the aura of the breathing earth seed, beside Hermione's pillow. The jade gave off a warm glow. Its purpose was to nourish the soul. The end-of-year feast that night felt brighter than anyone could remember. The Great Hall had been decorated in Hufflepuff's black and gold to celebrate their victory in the House Cup. Cedric's outstanding Quidditch performance, Jongwoo's aid in healing Mick during the petrification crisis, and her warning in the Forbidden Forest, the details of which remained undisclosed, had all contributed sizable bonus points to the house. When Professor Dumbledore announced the winner, the Hufflepuff table erupted. Their cheers nearly shook the rafters. Even Jongwoo, usually cool and reserved, let a rare, faint smile touch her lips. Cedric sat beside her, his hazel eyes reflecting the hall's light and her smile, warm with shared joy. Before the feast ended, Dumbledore rose again, his blue eyes sweeping the hall. "Finally, there is one student whose contribution cannot be measured by mere points," he said. He let his gaze rest on the Hufflepuff table. When the castle faced a grave danger, she displayed extraordinary courage, clear-sightedness, and ancient wisdom and power from the east. She protected the vulnerable, warned of a looming threat, and in her own way, silently contributed to the safety of this school. All eyes turned to Jongwoo. She straightened slightly, surprised. Dumbledore smiled. "For this, I present the Hogwarts Special Contribution Award." He flicked his wand, and an exquisite badge, crafted of gold and mithril, with a shimmering, iridescent glazed seed set at its center to symbolize the breathing earth seed, floated toward her, bathing the hall in a soft, noble light. Warm, sincere applause followed, more admiring than any before. The Hufflepuffs cheered the loudest. Jongwoo looked first at the badge, then into Dumbledore's eyes, which seemed to see more than they let on. She knew he had sensed something of her spiritual power, the breathing earth seed, her warning in the Forbidden Forest, and perhaps even her suspicions about the basilisk. The award was at once recognition, protection, and expectation. She reached out and took the badge. The glazed seed in its center warmed slightly in her palm and seemed to resonate with the breathing earth seed tucked in her sleeve pocket. For the first time since arriving, she truly felt, that she belonged here. Chapter 22. The Journey Home and the Invitation of Summer. The term had ended, and the Hogwarts Express steamed off again, carrying students eager to go home after a last stop at Hogsmeade. Carriages were full of laughter and chatter, plans for the holidays and the next school year. Jongwoo sat alone in a window compartment, watching the countryside blur past. This year's events still felt like a dream. From Chixia Stream to Hogwarts, from the aloof Eastern Ferry to the now recognized Hufflepuff Little Farmer, from obscurity to the Special Contribution Award and that boy with warm amber eyes. A gentle knock sounded on the compartment door. Cedric Diggory stood in the doorway, his smile sunny and easy. "Hi, Jongwoo. Mind if I come in? The other carriages are too noisy." Jongwoo nodded and scooted over. Cedric sat opposite her. The clack of the train was the only sound for a heartbeat. He watched her, hesitated, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a small box tied with a dark green ribbon. "This is for you." His voice trembled just a little. "Consider it a belated Christmas gift, or, well, to celebrate getting through a wonderful school year." He grinned and pushed the box across. Surprised, Jongwoo took it. The box felt a little heavy in her hands. She untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside lay an exquisitely bound notebook. The dark brown leather cover was embossed with winding vines and magical plants. It was warm and smooth to the touch. The pages inside were thick and delicate, giving off a faint, fresh scent of greenery. On the first page, a small, moving photograph caught her eye. The Knight Hufflepuff won the House Cup. Cedric was holding up a model of the Golden Snitch. He'd even borrowed it from Professor McGonagall for the picture. And in one corner of the photo, Jongwoo, in her robe, cradled a small pot of newly sprouted sunlight orchids, wearing a faint but genuine smile as she looked out of the frame toward Cedric. Cedric in the photo was facing her, smiling brilliantly. Beneath the photograph, in Cedric's neat, flowing hand, was a note. "To Jongwoo, may your greenhouse always be full of life, and may your summer be as bright as sunlight. Looking forward to seeing you again in September. Your friend, Cedric Diggory." Jongwoo felt her heart skip. She looked at the rare smile in the photo, then at the warm sincerity in the boy before her, and a small, quiet warmth rose in her chest. She closed the notebook gently and held it against her palm, feeling the leather's heat. When she looked up, a clear, soft ripple had spread across her cool features. "Thank you." Her voice was still reserved, but softer than usual. "It means a lot." Cedric saw the light in her eyes and his own brown eyes brightened. His smile widened. "I'm glad you like it." He took a breath as if gathering courage. "Jongwoo, if you're free this summer, my home's in Ottery St. Catchpole, not far from London. My father has a huge garden full of herbs. Maybe you'd like to come see it? We could exchange herbology tips." She looked at him, at his hopeful expression, and thought of the brass watering can and the sunlight orchid seeds tucked away in her things. She felt the breathing earth seed in her sleeve warm slightly, as if in agreement. Jongwoo nodded, the corners of her mouth curving into a clear, subtle smile that was, in its own way, captivating. Okay. Chapter 23. Fei Hong's Letter and the Prisoner's Shadow. Summer vacation begins. Summer light filtered through the thin mists of Chixia Stream in cloud recesses and fell across Jongwoo's spirit garden. The Ninglu grass spread its golden-veined leaves, the Taixian vine's tendrils grew tougher and darker, and even the magical plants nurtured with Hogwarts' spiritual fertilizer thrived. Jongwoo, in a simple Taoist robe, walked barefoot over the warm loam, fingertips brushing leaves and feeling the pulse of life. In her pouch lay letters from afar, warm threads of friendship reaching across oceans. The first was from Cedric Diggory, neat handwriting on parchment, smelling faintly of sun and grass. "Jongwoo, greetings. I hope the summer at Chixia Stream is as beautiful as a fairyland. The sunlight in Ottery St. Catchpole is lovely, and the orchids you sent to my father's garden have already set buds. They seem to like the soil here. I used the compost ratio you suggested. I've attached a magical photo so you can see them. There's a new flavor at Fortescue's in Diagon Alley, green apple mint, refreshing and unexpected. It reminded me of your Beyond flower pastry. If you come to London this summer, Tell me, and I'll take you to try it. I look forward to hearing about the miracles in your spirit garden. Best wishes, Cedric. Attachment: an animated magical photograph of several sunlight orchids, their emerald leaves unfurling and blue-purple buds trembling in the breeze. Jiang Wu studied the photograph, tracing Cedric's handwriting with her fingertip as if she could feel the English sunshine. She tucked the photo into the leather notebook he had given her, dipped her pen in ink, and wrote back, telling him about the Ninglu grass flowering and her morning ritual of collecting spirit dew. After a moment's hesitation, she slipped a small packet of her dried spiritual chrysanthemum tea, good for clearing the mind and sharpening vision, into the envelope. The next letter was from Hermione Granger, densely written on plain stationery, the eagerness of a scholar in every line. Dear Jiang Wu, thank you so much for the spirit-calming jade. Madame Pomfrey said it had a miraculous effect on steadying my mind. When I woke up, there was nearly no haze or exhaustion. It's incredible. This summer, I'm swamped. Besides homework, I'm researching several topics. 1. Basilisk ecology and ancient restraint methods. I found records of using rooster crows to drive off snakes in pharaonic Egypt, but I'm unsure of the principle. 2. Horcruxes. Oh my goodness. I found a reference in a restricted potion text. Tom Riddle's diary is one such example. Splitting one's soul for immortality. How horrifying. Professor Dumbledore is very secretive about it. 3. A comparative study of Eastern talismans and Western defensive magic. Your Huichin talisman has been a huge inspiration. It seems to work by stimulating life force and dispersing negative energy, rather than the rule-based counters we use in the West. Could you explain its drawing principles and channels, or recommend some Eastern texts? I promise I'll keep it secret. I look forward to your insights. Have a summer full of discovery. Sincerely, Hermione. P.S. Harry is having a terrible time at the Dursleys. We're trying to get him out, which may involve unconventional methods. Hermione's intensity left Jiang Wu both amused and a little uneasy. She answered carefully, steering away from the dangerous topic of Horcruxes. She felt instinctively that it was a subject to be treated with utmost caution, and instead explained, in simple terms, how the Huichin talisman called on pure heaven and earth energy to dispel malign influence, shore up vitality, and support the righteous. She recommended a few introductory works, titles translated for Hermione's sake, and added a parenthetical, for academic reference only, do not attempt without guidance. About Harry, she wrote, simply and cautiously, good luck, be careful. Fred and George Weasley's letter arrived stained with suspiciously colorful powder and written in their usual loud, sloping scrawl. Hey, to our revered vine queen and master of fertilizer purification, happy summer. The chickens, ducks, and gnomes at the burrow send their regards. They've been missing your vitality. We tested an improved skiving snack box powder on them, and the effect, well, it's invigorating. The stable version of skiving snack box Max, no singing hair this time, was a smash. We've named it Ginger Bomb. Included are a dozen samples, bright little spheres. Try them and tell us what you think. P.S. Mum made heaps of meat pies. Come round sometime. Ron let slip he finds your Luocifen quite addictive. Looking forward to collaborating. Your loyal business partners, self-proclaimed Fred and George. Attachment, a flashy cloth bag containing a dozen colorful ginger bombs. A rare smile crossed Jiang Wu's serene face. She pinched a candy and lightly probed its magical core. The flow was stable, and the mischief neatly contained. She wrote back with thanks, politely declined any high-profile joint ventures, but expressed interest in attending the Quidditch World Cup. In the envelope, she tucked a small brocade pouch of Taixian vine seeds, Eastern prank material with a temporarily strong adhesive property nourished by the marginal aura of she soil, along with simple instructions and a warning. Use with care. Consequences at your own risk. She imagined the twins' eyes lighting up. Cho Chang's letter came next, paper faintly scented with lotus, the script delicate and elegant. Junior Sister Jiang Wu, greetings. I'm Cho Chang from Ravenclaw. I admired your costume and desserts at Halloween, and your cleverness with the eagle ring in the corridor was incredible. Knowing you're from the East, my parents are from Hong Kong, made me feel close to you. This summer, I've been helping London's Chinese magical community. There are many interesting trinkets and delicious foods here, but I miss the taste of home. Your stories about growing vegetables and making desserts with wand and Eastern methods inspired me. I'd like to blend some Eastern elements into my magical life, but don't know where to begin. Could you advise me on balancing Eastern traditions with Hogwarts magic? Or simply share something to ease homesickness? I've enclosed a small box of osmanthus cakes from the community. Hope you like them. Sincerely, Cho Chang. Attachment, a box of delicate osmanthus cakes. Jiang Wu answered with practical tips: how to set up an Eastern spirit plant plot in a greenhouse corner, how to brew familiar flavors in a cauldron, and simple ways to use spirit power for finer control of spells, like her own defensive light screen. She sent a packet of her spiritual tea blended with Ninglu petals and wrote, "Where the heart is at peace, there is the taste of home. Let us keep each other company." Those long, fulfilling summer days slipped by in the rhythm of garden work, her parents' care. Her mother still fretted about danger, but had begun to send more Eastern magical materials and the warm exchange of letters. Jiang Wu even considered Cedric's invitation to visit the Diggories and toyed with the idea of attending the Quidditch World Cup. Then, one dull afternoon, the calm shattered. An exhausted, mangy owl burst through the Chixia Stream's barrier and dropped the latest Daily Prophet at Jiang Wu's feet. The headline, bold and urgent, screamed, "Black escapes! Ministry on high alert! Azkaban's most dangerous prisoner, Sirius Black, escaped last night. The Ministry warns, this individual is extremely dangerous. The target may be Harry Potter." The paper printed a wanted photograph, a gaunt man with tangled dark hair and hollow cheeks, eyes like a storm, gray, burning with hatred and desperate resolve, staring unflinchingly at the reader. Jiang Wu's fingers went icy on the paper. Sirius Black? A traitor from the Black family branch that lay on her mother's side? A servant of Voldemort? The murderer of the Potters? And his target was Harry? A cold ran through her, sharper than any basilisk's hiss. Shadows that had been averted now gathered again, this time in a more dangerous, more frantic form. She tightened her grip around the Kinglan wand concealed in her sleeve and looked westward, toward Hogwarts, toward her friends, toward the people she had come to care for, and toward a madman who had escaped with a clear purpose. A new storm had already arrived. Chapter 24, Dementor's Frost. The Hogwarts Express, spewing its familiar white steam, pulled away from the bustle of King's Cross. But this year, the atmosphere in the carriages was different. An invisible weight hung over everything. Excited chatter was hushed, and the children's faces showed tension more than innocent anticipation. Outside the train, the sky was unusually gloomy, lead-gray clouds hanging low and carrying a chill that promised a storm. Jiang Wu found the Hufflepuff compartment. Hannah and Susan were already there, speaking in whispers about the wanted posters for Sirius Black in the Daily Prophet, their voices streaked with fear. "I heard he killed 13 people with a single curse," one whispered. "The Ministry says he's looking for Harry Potter. Merlin, what will Harry do? Are Dementors guarding Hogwarts now? It's terrifying to even think about." Jiang Wu sat quietly, expression composed, though her fingers tightened in her lap. The shadow of Sirius Black, like the low clouds outside, weighed on everyone. Her Chinglin wand was stashed in the sleeve pocket of her robe, and the jade amulet her father had given her pressed against her chest, sending a faint warmth through her. The train ran through the desolate Scottish Highlands. The scenery grew bleaker, and the sky darkened as if twilight had come early. Suddenly, a bone-deep cold fell over the compartment. The temperature plunged. Thick white frost condensed on the windows in an instant, spreading until the glass was coated. Light dimmed and warped. The flames in the wall lamps fought to stay lit, burning a faint, eerie blue. A suffocating sense of despair, like an icy tide, flooded the compartment. It felt as if joy, hope, and warmth had been forced out, leaving only relentless cold, darkness, and a numbing emptiness. "Ah!" Hannah gave a short cry and curled into herself, pale and trembling. Susan clapped a hand over her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks and her eyes went blank. Screams from other compartments rose and fell, mixed with the clatter of falling things. Jiang Wu felt a dizzy nausea and a pounding heart. This chill, this hopelessness, struck deeper than the basilisk-like pressure she had felt before. It was an attack on the soul itself. Her spiritual energy surged, instinctively rallied to resist, but it moved sluggishly, as though through an ice cave. The compartment door was flung open. A tall, hooded figure drifted in, floating a foot above the floor. Its face was lost in shadow beneath the hood, a formless darkness that seemed to swallow light. A pale, scabbed hand extended from its ragged cloak, oddly shimmering as it reached and drew in something from the air. A Dementor. The suffocating despair intensified tenfold. Hannah and Susan teetered on the edge of unconsciousness. A cold, blank numbness crept into Jiangwu's thoughts, and a parade of images surged unbidden into her mind. The disappointed faces of her elders when she failed the Chixia Stream Outer Sect competition, her helpless confusion when she first arrived in London and could not understand English, and Cedric's pale profile as he turned toward that terrible scream near the edge of the forbidden forest. No, she could not give in. Jiangwu bit her tongue hard. A sharp metallic tang and sting brought her back into herself. Inside the wide sleeves of her school robe, she formed Taoist hand seals with lightning speed, the clear mind and calm spirit seal. At the same time, she poured every scrap of spiritual energy she had into the Qinglin wand in her sleeve pocket. A restrained but tenacious emerald light spread from her. It was not dazzling, but it throbbed with life, a stubborn vitality that fought despair. Like a sprout pushing through ice, it carved a small, relatively warm patch amid the Dementor's absolute cold. Hannah and Susan felt the paralysis of despair loosen. They could breathe again, though the chill remained. The Dementor, used to feeding on happy memories, seemed unsettled by this strange power, neither memory nor joy, but full of living resilience. Its pale hand hesitated, and the darkness under its hood seemed to turn toward Jiangwu, concentrating its suffocating pull on her. Jiangwu's face drained of color. Holding that little oasis of life cost her everything. Spiritual energy poured from her like water through a broken dam. Her vision dimmed, her fingers forming the seals trembled. The emerald light guttered like a candle in wind. Expecto Patronum! Just as her strength nearly failed, a voice, weak but utterly steady, rang out at the compartment door. A bright, silvery white light, sharp as a dawn blade, cut through the darkness. From it sprang a swift, powerful silver wolf that leapt with a silent, triumphant roar, claws outstretched, launching itself at the Dementor. The Dementor gave an inhuman, wrenching sound and was forced back by the wolf again and again. The chill and despair receded like a tide rolling out. The wall lamps regained their glow. The frost on the windows began to run and melt. A man stood in the doorway, slightly graying hair, a tired, routed face softened by gentle, resolute eyes. His wand tip still glowed silver. He wore worn but tidy wizard robes. "Are you all right?" Professor Lupin's voice was full of concern as his gaze swept the three shaken occupants and lingered on Jiangwu, pale and sweating, her hands still in seal. For an instant, something like surprise and thoughtful curiosity flickered in his eyes. "Professor Lupin," Hannah cried through tears. Susan could only gasp. Jiangwu lowered her trembling hands. The clear mind seal's light faded. Her spiritual energy was nearly spent, and a wave of weakness washed over her. She leaned back and managed a shaky nod in answer to Lupin's question. Her view drifted past him to the open door of the adjacent Gryffindor compartment. Harry Potter lay fainted on the floor, paler than she was, with Ron and Hermione gathered around him. Cedric Diggory had already rushed over, his prefect badge shining on his chest, face anxious and angry. When he saw Jiangwu, exhausted and pale in her compartment, his hazel eyes filled with concern. He came to her side, knelt, and asked softly, "Jiangwu, are you hurt? How are you?" "I'm fine," she said weakly. "Just tired." Cedric's closeness, the warmth radiating from him, eased the taut cord in her chest, and exhaustion swept over her like a tide. Professor Lupin pulled a large slab of chocolate from his pocket and handed it to Harry, who took it between trembling fingers. He offered pieces to Jiangwu, Hannah, and Susan as well. "Eat," Lupin said gently. "You'll feel better." His gaze lingered on Jiangwu. "You did very well back there. To stay conscious and try to resist when Dementors are feeding is remarkable." He didn't comment on the exact method she had used, but his look said he had noticed something unusual. Cedric watched Jiangwu bite off small crumbs of chocolate and feel color return to her cheeks. Only then did he relax visibly. He rose and turned to Lupin, face serious. "Professor, how could Dementors get into the student compartments without authorization? This is far too dangerous." Lupin sighed. They're searching for Black. The ministry authorized them to act if necessary. I'll report what happened today to Professor Dumbledore. He looked out at the still sullen sky. Right now, everyone try to rest. We're almost there. Though the Dementor's immediate chill had passed, the shadow they cast and the fear of Black remained like the partially melted frost on the window. Jiangwu leaned against the glass, warmed by the chocolate and comforted by Cedric's presence, and closed her eyes. She knew that this school year's real trials had only just begun. Chapter 25, New Castle Rules, Black Defense Class. Hogwarts still stood majestically, but the atmosphere around it had changed completely. Giant Dementors drifted through the air like silent gray ghosts, bringing a pervasive chill and oppression. The castle gates and all entrances were heavily guarded, and Filch proudly displayed the newly posted Educational Decree No. 24, which forbade students from leaving the castle without permission, especially emphasizing that first and second years were absolutely not to leave Hogwarts grounds. At the start of term feast, Professor Dumbledore's voice rang out as always, but with an unprecedented gravity. He warned everyone of the danger posed by Black, explained the necessity of the Dementor's presence, while making it clear he disapproved of them being allowed on the train, and announced new security measures. Finally, he introduced the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Remus Lupin. Professor Lupin, though he looks— Dumbledore paused, choosing his words. Weather-beaten is an experienced and exceptionally capable wizard. I believe that under his guidance you will learn defensive skills that are truly useful in these troubled times. Professor Lupin stood and bowed to scattered applause. His tattered robe seemed out of place in the grandeur of the great hall, but his eyes were gentle and resolute. As a prefect, Cedric's responsibilities for the year had grown. He had to help maintain order, soothe anxious younger students, and oversee the implementation of the new security rules. Jiangwu could see a new mixture of composure and worry settling into his face, but whenever he looked at her, he offered the same warm smile, always asking after her condition. She had indeed been weak for 2 days after the train incident. Defense Against the Dark Arts became the most talked-about class. The first lesson was held in the staff room, which Professor Lupin assured them was big enough and safe enough. When Lupin pushed a large, creaking old wardrobe into the room, the students leaned forward in curiosity. Something inside seemed to be banging against the door. "Don't worry," Lupin said gently. "It's just a boggart. They like dark, enclosed spaces and will take the form of whatever you fear most." He explained the creature's nature and taught them the spell to defeat it. Ridiculous. The trick, he said, was to use a strong, humorous image to change your greatest fear into something ridiculous, thereby stripping it of power. Nervous excitement rippled through the class. Neville Longbottom was the first to be pushed forward. His boggart took the form of Professor Snape. Neville, thinking of his grandmother, transfigured it into Snape wearing his grandmother's clothes, which set the classroom roaring with laughter. One by one, others tried and turned their fears into jokes. When it was Jiangwu's turn, she stepped forward calmly. The wardrobe door burst open, and a chilling aura flooded the room. But what appeared was not a Dementor or any of the other more familiar horrors. The sight that emerged silenced the classroom entirely. It was Cedric Diggory, only he was not himself. His face was ashen, his eyes hollow. A dark, smoking wound gaped in his chest. He lay rigid and cold on the forest floor, as if turned to stone, motionless. Behind him, the forbidden forest loomed, its trees twisted and black. This was Jiangwu's deepest fear. The moment she had once sensed the basilisk at the edge of the forest and seen Cedric turn toward the unknown danger, in her subconscious that fleeting profile had swollen into this desperate, lifeless image. Intense fear and sorrow gripped her. Her hand shook on her wand. The pure heart seal technique almost formed instinctively. The word ridiculous stuck in her throat. She couldn't force it out. She could not imagine Cedric like this, nor could she picture him as something funny. The fear was too real, too concrete. Ridiculous. Before she could finish, a gentle, steady voice spoke behind her. A beam of magic struck the image of dead Cedric. The illusion twisted. The wound turned into a puddle of bright, shimmering jelly, his pale face now sporting enormous comical glasses, and a sequined outfit patterned with prancing nifflers covered him. His rigid body popped up like a spring, bouncing awkwardly and absurdly. The classroom exploded with laughter. Jiangwu turned and saw Professor Lupin lowering his wand, giving her a kind, encouraging look as if to say, "It's all right. This happens." She drew a deep breath, forcing down the tremor in her chest, and gave Lupin a grateful nod. The suffocating despair had receded, replaced by something still strange but manageable. She raised her wand, and her voice, steadier though still barely trembling, forced the spell out. "Ridiculous." The magic struck the bouncing figure again. The ridiculous Cedric collapsed into a round, plump niffler wearing a tiny suit and bow tie, clutching a giant galleon and rolling on the floor with a greedy expression. Another peal of laughter echoed through the room. The crisis had been averted. Jiang Wu melted back into the crowd, a chill running down her spine. She stole a glance at Cedric, sitting among the Hufflepuffs. He had clearly seen the boggart's image too and was watching her with worried hazel eyes, silently mouthing, "Are you okay?" She gave a small, curt nod and quickly looked away. That moment of fear had made one thing painfully clear. Cedric mattered to her more than she had admitted, even to herself. His concern felt like warmth, and it also exposed a vulnerability she wasn't yet ready to face. Chapter 26, The Mist of Divination. Class and the Glimmer of the Greenhouse. Professor Trelawney's divination classroom sat in the North Tower, always thick with the drowsy scent of spices. Dim light pooled under tasseled drapes, lending the room an air of mystery, whether genuine or deliberately contrived. Jiang Wu had little patience for it. At Chixia's stream, prying into heavenly secrets and forecasting fate were taboo, corrosive to one's Tao heart. She preferred to stay grounded and live in the present. Still, the course was required. In her quavering voice, Professor Trelawney instructed the students to peer into their crystal balls and try to catch glimpses of the future. "The future is like a path in the mist," she muttered, eyes half closed as spice smoke curled around her. "You need a clear spiritual sight to perceive but a glimpse." Jiang Wu stared into the cloudy glass before her. All she could see was her own blurred reflection and the distortion of the smoke. She let her mind relax, refusing to force anything, simply allowing her spiritual energy to flow and keeping her focus uncluttered. Suddenly, the mist inside the crystal ball churned. Fragmented, distorted images stabbed through her consciousness like lightning. Cold, damp, moss-covered stone, a long, decaying corridor. A gaunt, black-haired figure stumbling through the dark, running with a madness in him and a desperate hope burning in his deep gray eyes. A huge, shaggy black dog, silent under the moon, its gaze full of human pain and resolve. A tattered, yellowed parchment, sketched with the castle's secret passages, a name, Wormtail, circled over and over. Finally, a blinding green light and a heart-wrenching scream, wrapped in a bone-deep sorrow that seemed to suffocate her. The visions flashed by too fast for a full grasp, but they left Jiang Wu dizzy and breathless. The last sorrow hit her hardest. It was almost physical. Before she could steady herself, Professor Trelawney gave a high-pitched shriek that made the whole class jump. She pointed straight at Jiang Wu. "Child, I see it," the professor cried, voice trembling. "The aura of death. A giant black dog, the grim, a harbinger of death. It is right beside you, in your teacup. Oh, poor child." She clutched her chest as if about to faint. Every eye in the classroom turned to Jiang Wu, full of horror and pity. Jiang Wu said nothing. Her face stayed calm. The images she'd caught were chaotic, but they were not a straightforward omen of death. What mattered to her were the corridor, the running black-haired man, and the parchment. The fragments pointed to clues, not to an immediate doom. "Professor," she said coolly, interrupting Trelawney's theatrics, "there's only smoke in my crystal ball. You must be mistaken." Her voice held a quiet certainty that left no room for argument. For a moment, Professor Trelawney seemed taken aback. Then she shook her head gorgeously. "No, mortal eyes cannot see fate's whisperings," she insisted. "But the grim does not mistake its target." The bell rang then, drowning her last words. Class ended, and Jiang Wu was the first to pack and leave. She had no use for the performance, yet those fragmented visions stayed with her. Black dog, secret passages, Wormtail, the clues circled in her mind. Weekend came, and the castle felt emptier. Upperclassmen who were third years or older had permission to go to Hogsmeade with a guardian's signature, and they had gone in a rush, trailing butterbeer and sweets behind them. As a second year, Jiang Wu had to stay in the castle. Hannah and Susan, both third years, were away too, and the common room felt quieter than usual. She walked alone to the greenhouse, the place she felt most at ease. Her experimental beds, Ninglu grass and the Xian vine, were thriving in the rich aura of the soil. The sunlight orchid seeds Cedric had given her had just sprouted tender green tips beneath the glowing magic lights. She picked up a small watering can and began to water them carefully. The warmth and humidity, the clean scent of plants, loosened the tightness in her shoulders. "They're adapting well," a gentle voice said from behind. Jiang Wu turned. Cedric Diggory stood framed in the greenhouse doorway, in casual clothes dusted with travel grime, his smile still warm. He had clearly just returned from Hogsmeade. She replied, looking at the tiny sunlight orchid shoots. "Just sprouted." Cedric crouched to inspect them, his brown eyes bright with pleasure. "That's good." Hogsmeade was lively. Honeydukes released anew. He scrunched his face and made a comic, disgusted expression, cockroach cluster flavor. "It felt like something was missing, though," he added without saying it directly, his gaze lingering on her. He reached into his pocket and produced a small parcel wrapped in oil paper. "I brought you something," he said, handing it over. "Butterbeer-flavored soft candy from the Three Broomsticks, and this." He unwrapped a tiny box tied with a ribbon. Inside gleamed a small pair of gardening pruners, fitted with a magnifying glass and a little light. "I saw it at Dervish and Banga's and thought it would suit you," he said. Jiang Wu took the parcel and the box. The butterbeer candy smelled faintly sweet. The pruners were cool and solid in her hand. The quiet warmth of Cedric's return eased the little hollow she'd felt about missing Hogsmeade. "Thank you," she said softly, and her usually cool features softened. Cedric hesitated, then lowered his voice. "About the Boggart incident," he began, clearly still worried about what she'd seen in divination. "Professor Lupin's Patronus charm is strong, very effective against Dementors. It's difficult, but if you want to learn, I can find a quiet place and practice with you. I know some tricks for training." His eyes were honest and a little hopeful. In the greenhouse's gentle light and the hush of plants, his offer felt like a protective hand. Jiang Wu met his gaze and nodded. "Okay." A cold shadow slid across the glass just then. Outside, a huge, ominous Dementor drifted past the greenhouse window on its routine patrol. Even separated by glass, its chilling presence seeped inside. Cedric's smile vanished. He stepped forward as if to place himself between Jiang Wu and the window, his hand tightening at his side. Jiang Wu's fingers closed around the wand in her sleeve, and a solemn look crossed her face. The memory of the black figure and the threat of Dementors hung over the castle like a permanent gray sky. Danger was never far. Yet in the warm, plant-scented quiet of the greenhouse, the two of them standing side by side made a small, steady barrier against that cold. Outside the window, the Dementor's huge gray shadow slowly slid away like an ominous curtain, and the brief stifling pressure in the greenhouse eased. The chill it left behind, however, clung to the air. Cedric's hand, which had been clenched at his side, relaxed. He turned to look at Jiang Wu. The sharpness in his hazel eyes softened into concern, with the faintest trace of fear still lingering. "They're getting bolder, coming this close in daylight." Jiang Wu made a small sound of agreement and ran her fingertips over the cool metal of the pruning shears. The touch calmed her scattered thoughts. She carefully put away the butterbeer gummies and the shears, then looked up at Cedric. "When do we start Patronus practice?" His smile arrived as if on cue, warm enough to banish the last of the gloom. "You're always so direct." He looked around the warm, humid living room of the greenhouse. "This place is perfect for concentrating, quiet, full of life, but it would be safer to practice where Dementors cannot enter at all." "Do you know about the Room of Requirement?" Jiang Wu shook her head. She'd explored the castle far less than she had the greenhouse and library. Cedric's eyes lit with a little adventurer's excitement. "It's a very magical place. You think of the kind of room you need, walk back and forth 3 times in front of the wall, opposite the troll-bashing Barnaby the Barmy tapestry on the 8th floor, and a door appears. We'll ask for a completely safe, undisturbed space for practicing powerful patronuses. Okay. Jiangwu's curiosity about secret magic brightened her face. The two left the greenhouse and headed up the corridors. Rounding a corner, they were met by a loud, mocking drawl. "Look who it is." Draco Malfoy's voice carried down the hall. He stood with Crabbe and Goyle like a living blockade. Their target was Neville Longbottom, who cradled a flower pot in both hands, eyes cast down, cheeks flushed. The plant inside was limp and sickly, leaves yellowed and curling. I just wanted to move it into the light," Neville stammered. "What it needs," Malfoy sneered, "is for you to stay away, Longbottom." He reached to shove the pot. "Let's see, rotten roots, just like your pathetic potion skill." Malfoy. The voice that cut through the taunting was calm and cold, not loud but sharp as falling ice. Malfoy froze, then turned to see Cedric and Jiangwu approaching. His face drained of color. Crabbe and Goyle shuffled back. "Bullying younger students, how very Slytherin of you." Cedric stepped forward, tall and composed, his prefect badge gleaming. "Do I need to remind you of school rules, or shall I fetch Professor Snape to judge your herbology display?" Malfoy's bravado faltered. When Jiangwu's cool gaze swept over him, he flinched as if some invisible sting had touched his wrists. Rumors of a vine witch in his ancestry had always unnerved him. He gave a forced sniff. "You're lucky this time, Longbottom." He and his cronies slunk away. Neville stood shaking, clutching his pot. Tears glittered in his eyes, but they were more grateful than ashamed. "The thank you," said Jiangwu. "You're welcome." Cedric smiled and patted Neville's shoulder. "Next time tell a prefect or a professor." Jiangwu's attention went to the plant. It was a young sneezing grass. Where its leaves should have been bright green, they were yellowed and curling. "Let me see," she said. Neville hesitated, then handed the pot over. Jiangwu closed her eyes briefly and let a faint thread of her spirit energy brush the soil and leaves. She frowned. "It's not a light problem. The roots have burn marks and the soil's too acidic. What did you feed it? Nutrient? Fertilizer?" Neville blinked. "Professor Sprout said sneezing grass likes slightly acidic soil, so I poured some of the pumpkin juice I didn't finish at breakfast into it." His voice sank to nothing. Cedric coughed to hide a laugh. Jiangwu's expression was more bemused than scolding. She produced a small crystal vial from her pouch, diluted spirit dew, pale green inside, 3 drops around the roots each day. Put it on the 3rd shelf on the east side of the greenhouse. Diffused light, good ventilation. After a week, replace the topsoil with the neutral universal compost labeled in the greenhouse. Neville took the vial as if it were treasure, eyes wide. "Can it really be saved? Professor Sprout said you're good with plants." She was right. "It's not magic," Jiangwu said softly. "It's noticing what plants actually need." She pointed to a patch of damp moss clinging to the pot's rim. "That moss prefers shade and damp. Planted with sneezing grass, they compete for moisture and nutrients. It hurts both." Neville followed her finger like a pupil seeing a revelation. "I never noticed that. Thank you, Jiangwu. You know so much. Even more than the books." Seeing the genuine admiration in Neville and the way his whole face lit up talking about herbology, something inside Jiangwu warmed. He was clumsy and unsure, but when he talked about plants, there was a steady, sincere brightness to him. Uncharacteristically, she added, "Go often, observe more, and use less pumpkin juice." Neville nodded vigorously, then bowed awkwardly and hurried toward the greenhouse, clutching his pot and the vial like a promise. Cedric watched him go, then looked at Jiangwu with a soft smile. "You helped him a lot. He really has talent for herbology. He just needs confidence and guidance." "You gave him hope." Jiangwu said nothing, though Cedric noticed the lines of her profile soften. They reached the 8th floor and the Barnaby the Barmy tapestry. Cedric walked back and forth 3 times in front of the empty wall opposite, concentrating on their request. A completely safe, undisturbed room, suitable for practicing Patronus charms. A plain oak door slid into being. Cedric opened it to a round, brightly lit room with off-white walls and a thick carpet. A small cluster of comfortable chairs and a tea table sat in a corner. The rest of the space was open. Overhead, the dome simulated a clear night sky, stars twinkling softly. The room felt tranquil and protected. Cedric drew his wand. The Patronus charm, Expecto Patronum, depends on summoning a powerful happy memory. It doesn't have to be big laughter. It can be the peace of gardening, the joy of a sprout, or someone sharing a pastry. The purer and freer the happiness, the stronger the Patronus. Concentrate on how it made you feel, and let that feeling fill you and pour out through the wand. Jiangwu gripped her Qinglin wand and breathed in. Happy memories flitted through her mind. The first drop of spirit dew caught at dawn when Ninglu grass bloomed in the Qixia stream garden. The moment seedlings unfurling in the greenhouse were fed by the earth spirit aura. Cedric on Halloween, eyes sparkling despite the spicy snail noodles, Neville holding his plant, hope lighting his face. But whenever she tried to gather warmth, the image of Cedric fallen, the boggart's shadow, crept in like a rotworm, chilling and distracting. Her instinct was to push it away, but Patronus required projecting happiness, not warding off fear. Expecto Patronum. Her first attempt produced only a fine, almost transparent wisp of silver that trembled and vanished. No solid glow, nothing like the silver light Lupin had shown on the train. Frustration tightened Jiangwu's features. Cedric's voice was steady, encouraging. That's perfectly normal for a first try. Don't rush. Focus on the feeling more than the image. Let happiness be your shield, not something you grasp. She closed her eyes. Instead of hunting for a single memory, she let herself melt into the calm of working in the greenhouse beside Cedric, the quiet understanding as they tended plants together, the comfortable warmth that rose in her chest when he handed her the brass watering can and pruning shears. It wasn't a hot, blazing joy, but a steady, reassuring warmth that felt like hot spring water seeping through stone. She raised her Qinglin wand slowly and let life energy flow with that peaceful intent. Expecto Patronum. This time, a bright, solid silver-white light burst from her wand, full of vitality. The light condensed and took shape. An elegant crane, glowing softly, appeared in the center of the room. Graceful and calm, it beat its wings once and scattered tiny motes of silver like stardust. The presence it carried was cleansing and protective. The whole room felt animated. Cedric's breath caught. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "You did it. A crane. So fitting." Jiangwu watched the Patronus in astonishment. In her own culture, cranes symbolized longevity, nobility, and auspiciousness. The bird suited her, serene, lofty, tied to life energy. The crane circled her, its cry echoing in a way that seemed to touch something timeless, then dissolved into silver sparks. A quiet joy and a comforting reassurance swelled in her. She had succeeded. This power could stand against Dementors. Cedric stepped closer, his expression a mix of pride and something warmer. He reached out and briefly clasped her wrist, then let go, smiling. "I knew you could do it. Your Patronus is the most special I've ever seen." Heat crept into Jiangwu's cheeks. She looked down at the silver glow at her wand's tip and felt, for the first time since arriving in this strange new world, that she was not only capable of protecting others, she had people she wanted to protect, and people who would protect her. The feeling was like a sunlight orchid shoot breaking quietly through soil in the greenhouse, small, steady, and beginning to grow. The successful summoning of the Patronus charm was like a warm light pushing back a long shadow in Jiangwu's chest. It shifted something quiet and steady between her and Cedric. Their practice sessions in the room of requirement had become an unspoken secret. Cedric patient, instructing her how to hold the Patronus form longer, how to gather a string of happy thoughts fast when her mind wavered. Jiangwu's strong spiritual foundation and the calm joy she drew from nature made her silver crane Patronus grow denser and more nimble with each attempt. That night on the astronomy tower, the wind bit through their robes, but the galaxy seemed almost close enough to touch. Professor Sinistra had the lower years draw the star chart for Leo. Jiangwu worked the telescope quietly, setting the stars into place with care. The lines she inked on the parchment were clean and sure. Cedric, though he didn't have to attend a first or second-year class, lingered under the excuse of helping and stood right beside her. The handle of the Big Dipper points west, and Regulus is around there, very bright, like a blue-white diamond. Cedric leaned in, his breath fogging in the cold. His fingers slipped over Jiangwu's shoulder to point at a bright speck in the black. She followed his finger and found the star easily, giving a small hum, but she didn't withdraw from the telescope. He was close enough that the faint scent of grass and sun left over from Quidditch practice, mingled with the cold night air. His arm brushed hers. "You draw very accurately," he murmured, his voice warm with admiration. "Better than I was at your age." Jiangwu's heart picked up. Her hand on the telescope's focus knob tightened. She tilted her head a little to create space and instead met his gaze. Under the sweep of stars, his hazel eyes were deep and clear, reflecting her silhouette and the hint of a smile. "Thank you," she whispered, quickly turning back to the lens as if to hide her flushed ears. Cedric's voice softened further, as if not to disturb the quiet of the sky. In Greek myth, Leo stands for the Nemean lion that Hercules slew. Does it hold a special meaning in Eastern astrology as well? Jiangwu steadied herself and let her voice carry on the cold breeze. In the West, it's linked to warriors and conflict, Kuisu in some systems, but as the stars move, it also speaks to vitality. Regulus is called Tianguan in Chinese, the celestial gate, a guardian of peace and order. She bridged the Western constellation to Kuimulang of the Eastern 28 Mansions, emphasizing its protective aspect. Cedric listened, rapt and impressed. "Tianguan, guardian of peace. That suits it. You always surprise me, Jiangwu." He glanced from the star to the girl beside him, lit thinly by starlight, clear, cool, like moonlight itself, and felt the sky brighter than usual. After astronomy, Jiangwu went back to the greenhouse to tend her experiment. Under the lamp, the golden veins on the Ninglu grass leaves were sharper and glowed faintly. The Tixian vine's tendrils were as tough as iron, coiling around the trellis she'd made. The sunlight orchid Cedric had given her had produced several broad leaves and looked happy. "Jiangwu! Jiangwu!" Neville Longbottom burst in like a gust, clutching a flower pot so hard his knuckles blanched. He was flushed and breathless, excitement replacing the usual shyness that clung to him. Look at it! It's alive! More than alive!" Jiangwu crouched and looked at the plant in his hands. The sneezing grass that had been wilting was not only restored, its leaves were a fresh, bright green, and along some edges and veins, tiny dawn-like golden halos shimmered. The whole plant seemed more vigorous than ordinary sneezing grass. "I watered it with that green solution every day like you said," Neville babbled. "Changed the soil, put it on the east shelf." He trailed off, eyes wide. "This morning it looked like this. Professor Sprout saw it. She said she's never seen anything like it. She called it a beneficial magical mutation, very rare. She told me to tell you." Jiangwu felt a small thrill of surprise. She knelt and gathered a fingertip of spiritual awareness, probing the plant. The feedback made her eyebrow lift. Its life force had been gently strengthened and its sensitivity to magical fluctuations amplified. The golden halos were the overflow of active internal vitality. The diluted spiritual dew Zhao had suggested, combined with Neville's clumsy but attentive care, and perhaps a little of his inadvertent magic, had catalyzed a beneficial mutation. "It's very healthy," she said, looking up at Neville with a serious, approving smile. "The change came from its own potential and your care. You did very well." Neville's face went red with delight, his posture straightening as pride replaced uncertainty. "Really? I just did what you said." He scratched his head and then, bright-eyed, asked, "What are the golden lights? Will they harm it? Will it still sneeze?" "They're a sign of active life energy. Good," Jiangwu said. "As for effects, we'll need to watch. Its sneeze powder might be gentler, perhaps even soothing or mildly invigorating to the mind. It needs testing." She thought of mandrakes. Perhaps this mutant sneezing grass could become a gentler adjunct for reviving potions. It was only a preliminary thought, but worth exploring. "Can I help test it?" Neville's hope was instant and earnest. "Yes." Jiangwu nodded. "Start by keeping a daily log of its growth and the halo's intensity. Note environmental variables, light, humidity, soil composition." "Okay, I'll write everything down." Neville dug a battered notebook and a stub of pencil from his pocket and hunched over a workbench, muttering into the page. "Nova 7, clear to cloudy. Greenhouse temp, east shelf light. Halo on leaf stronger than yesterday." Jiangwu watched him, the sight of his concentrated, sincere, care-warming something inside her. In these small corners of resistance, plants thriving, clumsy hands learning patience, there was a quiet power of its own. A commotion at the greenhouse door cut through the calm. Ron Weasley's voice was loud and exasperated. I'd bet all my chocolate frog cards. Scabbers is terrified of that blasted cat. He's been a wreck, skin and bones, hiding under the bed and chewing his toes. Jiangwu's eyes flicked to the rat in Ron's arms. The creature looked unwell, bedraggled in a way that made Ron's complaint believable. From habit more than anything, she attuned herself and caught a nearly imperceptible ripple, a faint, well-hidden darkness in the rat's soul thread, nothing like an ordinary animal's signature. It was subtle, almost dismissible. She frowned for a moment but didn't dwell on it. Rats frightened by cats could show oddness. Her focus returned to Neville and the golden-haloed sneezing grass, and the notebook growing thicker with small, hopeful entries. Chapter 29, Undercurrents, Quidditch, and Telepathy. Life in the castle, under the shadow of Dementors and the threat of Sirius Black, felt like a taut string. The arrival of Quidditch season offered a vital outlet for the students' tension. This year, Hufflepuff's lineup was stronger than ever, and as seeker and captain, Cedric carried immense expectations. On game day, the pitch buzzed with activity. Yellow and black flags rippled through the stands. Jiangwu sat in the front row of the Hufflepuff section, Hannah and Susan beside her, all wide-eyed with excitement. The sky was overcast and a cold wind blew, but the atmosphere was electric. Cedric hovered on his broom, dark hair mussed by the wind, making his final adjustments with a focused, steady expression. When his eyes swept the stands and landed on Jiangwu, the tense line of his mouth relaxed into a small smile. He gave a quick wave. Jiangwu's heart skipped. She returned a slight nod, her face composed, though her fingers tightened imperceptibly on the railing. The match was fierce. Hufflepuff's chasers coordinated flawlessly and scored repeatedly, but Cedric, as seeker, faced enormous pressure. The opposing seeker was skilled and stuck to him like glue. To make things worse, a cold rain began to fall, blurring visibility. Then a sudden commotion on the sidelines. Several enormous Dementors had slipped past the defenses and drifted onto the pitch like tattered gray canvases, gliding low and sucking the joy from the air. Their attention seemed fixed on Cedric, who was flying highest and most visible. "No!" A terrified shout rose from the stands. "Side! Watch out!" A bone-deep cold and overwhelming despair swept the pitch. Cedric was the first to be hit. His broom felt heavy and numbing, and dark images flashed through his mind. His father's worried face, the oppressive gloom of the castle, and even the sight of his own fallen self from Jiangwu's boggart illusion. His flight wavered, and his face went pale. "Expecto Patronum," someone shouted. At that instant, a clear, steady voice cut through the wind, rain, and noise, a voice that carried a calm, reassuring authority. A brilliant silvery white light shot up from the front of the Hufflepuff stands. Within it, an elegant silver crane spread its wings, and its clear cry seemed to strike a chord within everyone's souls, dispelling gloom as it charged at the Dementors. Wherever the crane passed, the icy despair melted like snow. The Dementors shrieked and were driven back, their gray cloaks whipping violently. Cedric felt lightness flood him. The suffocating chill and black thoughts vanished, replaced by warmth and hope. He looked up and saw the Patronus crane circling above him, its silver glow bathing his slightly pale, handsome face. He understood at once where the protection had come from and turned his gaze toward the stands. Jiangwu held her Qinglin wand aloft. Its tip shone with silver light, highlighting her exquisitely beautiful, resolute profile. Her eyes were sharp and unyielding, fixed on the Dementors. She carried an aura of inviolable dignity, different from her usual reserve. The wind and rain had soaked her hair and robes, but she stood like a Valkyrie, a guardian. The pitch fell utterly silent. Everyone watched, stunned. Hufflepuff's Eastern Witch had produced a full, corporeal Patronus and forced the Dementors to retreat. Merlin's beard. "It's Jiangwu, her Patronus. So cool." After a beat of stunned silence, the Hufflepuff stands erupted in deafening cheers and applause. Students from other houses cheered too. Cedric stared at the figure who had cleared the sky for him, his hazel eyes filled with a mix of pride, relief, and something fiercer. He took a breath, all distraction gone, leaving only fighting spirit and the desire to win. He crouched on his broom and plunged forward like an arrow released from a bow, scanning the rain-swept air. Minutes later, a yellow and black blur arced perfectly through the downpour. Cedric shot his hand up, his fingers closed around the wriggling golden snitch. Cedric Diggory has caught the golden snitch. Hufflepuff wins. Lee Jordan's voice, raw with excitement, rang out. The stadium's roar nearly lifted the roof. Teammates rushed to Cedric and flung him into the air. Even then, amid the celebration, his gaze kept cutting through the crowd to the girl in the stands, who was slowly lowering her wand. Rain streamed down her face. Her Patronus had faded, but she stood there, cool and luminous, like a light warmer than the sun. After the match, Jiangwu slipped away from the noisy celebrations and walked alone toward the greenhouse. The rain made the castle's stone walls look especially cold. As she reached the greenhouse door, a tall figure stepped out from the shadow of a nearby pillar. Jiangwu. Cedric's voice was urgent and still trembled with excitement. He had clearly rushed over. He hadn't changed out of his Quidditch robes, his hair plastered to his forehead, rain running down his face, but his hazel eyes blazed with complicated feeling. Jiangwu stopped and looked at him. He crossed a few paces so close they could feel each other's breath and the dampness on one another's clothes. He opened his mouth a dozen times before settling on a single, low sentence, thick with emotion. "Thank you for earlier, on the pitch." His gaze was fixed and heartfelt, gratitude mixed with something deeper. Rain dripped off his straight nose onto his heaving chest. Jiangwu felt her heart pound, as if it might leap from her ribs. She saw herself reflected in his eyes for the first time and felt a whirl of unfamiliar warmth and dizziness. She opened her mouth to speak, but her throat was dry. Cedric seemed to notice the charged closeness and for a moment looked shy. He didn't step back. Instead, he dipped his head slightly and in a softer voice edged with careful hope said, "It's not just thank you, Jiangwu. I'm glad you were there when I needed you. Your Patronus, it's beautiful, like you." The direct compliment flushed Jiangwu's ears crimson. She wanted to look away from the intensity in his eyes, but found herself held by the frank, ardent affection there. Her cheeks burned. Even the cold rain couldn't cool the warmth spreading through her. She lowered her lashes. They trembled like butterfly wings. "It's good that you're all right," she said at last. Her voice, still cool, betrayed a faint tremor. Cedric smiled, the sound a warm, clear chuckle in the rain. "I'm all right, thanks to you." He reached out as if to brush rain from her cheek, but stopped, instead taking her cool wrist through the soaked sleeve of her robe with a gentle, restrained touch. "Go inside quickly. Don't catch a cold. Will you come to the celebration later?" The warmth of his hand and that careful restraint stirred something deep in Jiangwu. She pulled her hand back, her fingertips curling, and nodded. Jiangwu turned and hurried into the greenhouse. Cedric stood in the rain, smiling brighter than ever, letting it wash over him. He knew that something between them had changed on that storm-swept pitch, beneath the light of a silver Patronus and in the silence of their locked eyes. Their feelings, witnessed by a quiet protection and the rain, had already begun to connect. Chapter 30. Rumors, Moonlight, and the Edge of the Forbidden Forest. The celebration feast for Hufflepuff's Quidditch Cup victory was lively, but Jiangwu's feat of summoning a corporeal Patronus on the pitch to drive back the Dementors was like a stone thrown into a pond. Ripples spread far beyond the game. Overnight, she became the focus of every conversation at Hogwarts. "Did you see? That Eastern girl from Hufflepuff. Her Patronus was a glowing crane. A corporeal Patronus. Most adult wizards can't do that." She looked amazing, like some kind of war goddess. No wonder she could save that cursed cat and even quiet the mandrake. Praise and wonder poured in like a tide. The Hufflepuffs beamed with pride and looked at Jiangwu with genuine admiration. Ravenclaws were intrigued by her Eastern techniques, trying to map her Patronus to Eastern constellations and spirit beasts. Even Slytherin, in private, regarded her with a new, more cautious respect. The power to repel Dementors was a thing to take seriously. Where there is light, though, shadows gather. In the corners, hostile whispers began to spread. A corporeal Patronus? A second-year student? That's not normal. Who knows what strange Eastern methods she used? That power looks unnatural. I hear the Bones family, her mother's side, is secretive, and that Black escaped from prison. Her mother's related to the Blacks. Who knows what blood she has? She's always alone, always mysterious, always skulking near the Forbidden Forest, and she's always with that big oaf Hagrid. Malicious speculation and baseless rumor spread like moss in dark places, fed by jealousy and fear. They didn't dare confront her outright, but the sidelong looks and whispered gossip were not lost on Jiang Wu. Cedric noticed first. As a prefect and a respected upper year, his network of information was wide. He'd overheard some younger Slytherins outside the girls' bathroom trading nasty theories about evil powers and a suspicious bloodline. Anger flared behind his composed expression. He appeared behind them like a cold gust. "Gossiping and slandering classmates behind their backs," he said, voice like tempered steel. "Is that the pureblood upbringing you're so proud of? Should I deduct house points and let your head of house appreciate your conduct?" His prefect badge gleamed in the dim corridor. The Slytherins went pale, babbled apologies, and scurried off. Cedric watched them go, brows drawn. He couldn't stop every whisper, but he had to try. He found Jiang Wu in the library, poring over a heavy tome on ancient Patronus lore. He sat down opposite her. "Don't pay attention to the gossip," he said quietly, protective. "Your Patronus is a protective thing, righteous and open. They speak out of jealousy and fear. If you want, It's fine." Jiang Wu interrupted, looking up with a calm, clear face that betrayed no disturbance, as if the rumors were nothing more than a passing breeze. "The clear will clear themselves." Her composure came from a lifetime of solitude. Her upbringing on Chixia Stream had taught her to endure. Still, Cedric's concern warmed something inside her. He stared at her steady eyes, worry deepening into a softer protectiveness. "I won't let anyone harm you with slander." He broke into a softer tone. "The moon is beautiful tonight. Do you want to go out by the greenhouses? The moonflowers there open best under a full moon." He wanted to get her away from the castle's heavy atmosphere. Jiang Wu glanced at the bright moon outside and nodded. "Okay." The castle settled into the quiet of night. They walked toward the greenhouse area behind the buildings, away from the crowds and prying eyes. Moonlight poured over the grounds like quicksilver, draping everything in a silver haze. In the patch Neville tended, several moonflowers had indeed unfurled their petals. Translucent, silver-white blooms seemed to emit a faint glow, like fallen stars. They gave the place a hush of serenity. "So beautiful," Cedric murmured, moonlight sharpening the gentle lines of his face. He looked at Jiang Wu with something unsaid in his eyes. The affection in it was softer than the moonlight itself. Jiang Wu watched the flowers and felt the cool night breeze and the quiet comfort of his presence. The gloom left by the rumors eased beneath the peaceful sky. Then, from the darkness at the edge of the forbidden forest, a direction that pointed straight toward the humping willow, came a faint, chilling rustle and a few suppressed, whimpering barks. Both of them turned instantly, alert. Cedric gripped his wand, instinctively stepping a half pace in front of Jiang Wu, his eyes sweeping the moonlit patchwork of trees and shadow. "Sounded like a dog," or... Jiang Wu's senses went razor-sharp. Her spiritual perception flared, catching a chaotic aura laced with pain and madness. Within that chaos there was a flicker of something strangely familiar, so faint and fleeting she could barely trust it. Closer to that maelstrom she sensed another presence. Faint, like a candle in the wind, quivering, but with a peculiar, stubborn life. Small and frightened, like a startled mouse. The feeling tugged at a memory, the abnormal fluctuations she'd sensed from a rat earlier at the greenhouse entrance, Ron's rat, Scabbers. But the distance and the chaos of the aura made it impossible to tell for sure. "Something's over there," Jiang Wu whispered, pointing toward the humping willow. "It's chaotic, full of pain, and there's another faint life sign nearby." Cedric's face tightened. "Could be Black," he said grimly, thinking of the escaped Sirius Black and tales of violence, or an injured creature in the forest. "It's dangerous. We need to alert a professor." He made up his mind at once. "I'll go fetch Hagrid. He's the keeper. Jiang Wu, you go back inside and get the nearest professor, McGonagall or Lupin. Together." Jiang Wu's answer was brief and firm. She wouldn't leave him to face whatever it was alone. Cedric met her steady gaze and felt something warm and protective swell in his chest. He didn't argue. "Okay, let's go." They hurried toward the brightly lit castle, their long shadows stretching in the moonlight. Behind them, the muffled whimpering and rustling faded into the trees, but an uneasy premonition clung to them like cold vines. In the dark at the edge of the forbidden forest, secrets more unnerving than dementors seemed to shift and hide. High above, the full moon watched, pale and indifferent. Chapter 31. Echoes of the Shrieking Shack. The eerie sounds coming from the edge of the forbidden forest fell over the castle like stones dropped into a still lake, setting up ripples of unease. Cedric and Jiang Wu ran back to the brightly lit school as fast as they could. Cedric found Professor McGonagall, and Jiang Wu found Hagrid. At the news that Black might be moving nearby, and that strange noises had been heard at the forest's edge, Professor McGonagall's expression grew as severe as the tartan of her shawl. She immediately summoned Filch and several other professors and put out word to the Aurors patrolling the castle's perimeter. Hagrid, meanwhile, seized his enormous pink umbrella. Jiang Wu always felt there was something hidden in its handle, and with Fang at his heels, thundered off toward the Humping Willow, a moving hill against the night. Cedric and Jiang Wu were strictly ordered to remain in the common room. No one was to go out. The Hufflepuff common room felt heavy with fear. Rumors that Black might be near the castle left the younger students trembling. Cedric, in his duties as prefect, tried to reassure them, but the worry never left his brow. His eyes kept drifting to Jiang Wu. She sat by the fireplace, appearing to rest with her eyes half closed, but in truth she was channeling her spiritual power inward and outward at once, casting her perception like an invisible web, straining to catch any subtle fluctuations from the direction of the forbidden forest. Time crawled. Then a commotion rose outside, flashes of spells, hurried footsteps. Professor McGonagall and Hagrid returned to the entrance hall with several exhausted Aurors, bringing a chill with them. "There's no sign of Sirius Black," McGonagall said, her voice threaded with fatigue and irritation, though she retained every ounce of authority. "Near the Humping Willow, we found strange signs of a struggle, large prints, branches broken as if some big animals had fought, and the tip of a rat's tail." Her brows knitted tight. The answer was unsatisfactory. Ron's voice shot up, raw with grief. "A rat's tail? It's Scabbers. It must be Scabbers. He was eaten by that mad dog. I knew it. Hermione, Crookshanks. Ron, calm down." Hermione tried to soothe him, but her face was pale. Jiang Wu felt her heart lurch. A rat's tail, a chaotic aura, a faint life signature. Her mind flickered back to the strange, murky fluctuation she had sensed from Scabbers before. Could it be? The thought was daring and implausible. She had no proof and could not say it aloud. Hagrid's booming voice cut through the murmurs. "There's an old oak near the willow with a whole burst-in trunk leading right to the Shrieking Shack." "Stop," he said, bits of ice clinging to his beard. Inside was a mess, like a tornado'd come through bloodstains, but no one was there. The Shrieking Shack, Hogwarts' notorious haunted house. The students inhaled as one. McGonagall's voice steeled itself. "Back to bed. Now. The castle's defenses have been strengthened, and the Aurors will continue searching. No one is to be out after curfew, especially you, Mr. Potter." Her sharp gaze settled on Harry as he tried to edge away. He stopped reluctantly while Ron continued to sob over Scabbers' tragic end. The chaotic night finally wound down, but the cloud of suspicion hanging over the castle only grew heavier. Black had moved like a ghost, gone without a trace. On the walk back to the common room, Cedric escorted Jiang Wu in silence. As they reached the Hufflepuff entrance, he stopped and lowered his voice. "Jiang Wu, did you sense anything else back there? About that rat?" Moonlight through the high window cast shifting shadows on his face. Jiang Wu met his steady, trusting gaze and thought for a moment. Her voice came out almost beneath a whisper. "That rat, Scabbers, its soul aura was very strange, like a thick disguise. In the chaos there was another, extremely faint life nearby, but I couldn't be certain." She couldn't name things like Horcruxes or Animagi. She could only offer the vague perceptions she had. Cedric's hazel eyes narrowed, filled with stunned disbelief. Memories and possibilities crowded his mind. Black screaming, "He's at Hogwarts," when he escaped Azkaban, the way Ron's rat had lasted so many years. Could it be? "This is wild," he said, taking a steadying breath. "We can't make wild accusations without evidence. But I'll keep an eye on it. On Ron, mostly." He nodded solemnly, and when he looked at Jiang Wu, there was a new depth to his gaze. Her perceptions always seemed to brush up against truths that others could not see. Chapter 32. Secrets of the Full Moon Night. After the Shrieking Shack incident, the castle's defenses were tightened to an unprecedented degree. Dementors seemed to multiply, lingering like gray mold in the air and around the grounds, bringing a chill and a sense of despair that clung to everything. Professor Lupin's face had gone paler and more drawn than ever. He still taught dutifully, but Jiangwu, sharp-eyed as she was, sensed a deeper restlessness beneath his gentle manner. As the full moon approached, an obscure pressure seemed to hang around him, like the low barometer before a storm. During a Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson on identifying and handling deceptive creatures such as redcaps and hinkypunks, Lupin lectured with his usual clarity. Yet Jiangwu noticed the chalk in his hand trembled, and fine beads of cold sweat had gathered at his hairline, as if he were forcing himself through some private agony. When he turned to write on the board, Jiang Wu's keen spiritual sense caught a faint, fleeting fluctuation of energy, primitive, wild, and painful, like a low animal growl. Full moon. Werewolf. She remembered her mother Isabella's cryptic mention, through their two-way mirror, of the Bones family's old archives and scattered records about Remus Lupin. The symptoms and the timing made the answer obvious. She felt no fear. Instead, sympathy rose in her. Lupin's willpower was clearly enormous. He struggled to suppress his true nature to protect his students. After class, he almost stumbled as he hurried from the room, as if staying another moment would be unbearable. Jiangwu was packing quietly to leave when she noticed a small leather pouch left on the podium. The pouch's mouth had come loose, revealing a few oddly shaped dark brown tubers that smelled bitter. Wolfsbane tubers. High quality, carefully processed wolfsbane, exactly the kind used in the wolfsbane potion to help a werewolf keep his sanity during transformation. The potion was notoriously difficult and dangerous to prepare. One mistake could be fatal. If the potion was here, it seemed Professor Snape, despite his harshness, had been brewing it for Lupin. Jiangwu picked up the pouch and intended to hand it back. Her fingertips brushed the warm roots. A soft, balancing thread of spiritual energy flowed from her into them. The energy wouldn't change the herb's medicinal properties, but it would make the magic they contained more stable and gentle, perhaps easing some of Lupin's pain when he drank it. When Lupin hurried back and took the pouch, a flicker of surprise and gratitude crossed his face. He paused when his fingers touched the tubers, noticing that their aura seemed somehow calmer. He looked at Jiangwu with a complex, unreadable expression, questioning, grateful, and faintly relieved. "Thank you, Miss Jiangwu," he said. "You're welcome, Professor," she replied, and left. That was all she could do. The full moon night arrived. The castle felt heavy and repressed. Even the Dementors seemed more active, sweeping restlessly low above the grounds. Lupin, as expected, was not at dinner. Professor Snape took his place and announced, in his usual grim tone, a long and dreadful essay assignment on werewolf habits and weaknesses, which chilled the great hall more than any draught. Late that night, Jiangwu sat apart in a corner of the common room, studying an ancient Eastern text on protective formations, when a long, mournful howl, ripped by pain and frenzy, sliced through the castle walls from the direction of the forbidden forest. The sound was full of struggle. It made everyone's hearts race. Cedric, who had been quietly discussing patrols with several prefects, looked up instantly, his face going hard. His gaze met Jiangwu's, and in that instant, they both understood and feared the same thing. It was Lupin. The common room door was thrown open, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione burst in, breathless and white. Harry clutched the Marauder's map in his hand. Hermione's hair was a mess, and Ron looked shaken. "Prefect Diggory!" Harry's voice broke with panic. "Quick! Tell a professor! Sirius Black! He dragged Ron into the secret passage under the Humping Willow. He's going to the Shrieking Shack! He's going to kill Ron!" Chaos erupted. Cedric sprang up at once. "The map!" Jiangwu's voice cut through the noise with calm authority. She stepped forward and fixed her gaze on the Marauder's map in Harry's hand. "Give it to me." Harry handed it over. Jiangwu opened the map and, gathering a strand of spiritual energy at her fingertips, channeled it into a tiny, inconspicuous ink dot at the map's edge, the node she'd discovered while studying the map's own little life force. As she fed energy into it, the map's lines grew clearer and brighter, and the moving names stood out. Her eyes skimmed the layout like a hawk. The Shrieking Shack. The dot for Ron Weasley was moving wildly. Sirius Black's dot was trailing right behind, and another dot, Remus Lupin's, was racing from the edge of the Forbidden Forest toward the Homping Willow at astonishing speed. Even more startling, near Ron's path there was a tiny, easily missed ink dot whose name flickered faintly, Peter Pettigrew. Peter Pettigrew, supposedly the traitor thought dead in Black's hands, was alive, and he was in the Shrieking Shack with Ron and Black. Peter Pettigrew! He's in the Shrieking Shack! He's alive! Jiang Wu's voice rang out like a clap of thunder, silencing the room. She pointed to the tiny dot on the map for Cedric and Harry. Harry and Hermione gasped in shocked disbelief. Cedric, stunned for a moment, immediately took command. Harry, Hermione, go to Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape. Tell them everything. Shrieking Shack, Black, Lupin, Ron, and Pettigrew. He barked orders, then turned to Jiang Wu. I'll fetch the nearest Auror. Jiang Wu, you? I'm coming with you, Jiang Wu said without hesitation, slipping the map into her pouch. Her voice was steady and cold as steel. The Qinglin wand hidden up her sleeve was a promise of what she would do. Cedric read the resolve in her face and knew he couldn't change her mind. Good, let's go! They launched from the Hufflepuff common room like arrows, sprinting down empty, echoing corridors. Stone walls blurred past them, their footsteps loud in the silence. They had one goal, the Shrieking Shack. Truth and danger waited there. Chapter 33, The Confrontation in the Shacks and the Radiance of the Crane. The Homping Willow thrashed its branches like a furious giant in the night. Guided by the Marauder's map, Cedric and Jiang Wu threaded a narrow path through the swinging limbs, Cedric having cast a clever freezing charm to still the willow's motion long enough for them to slip into the tree's hollow. The tunnel was tight, damp, and reeked of earth and rot. Cedric moved first, his wand a pale torch, Jiang Wu right behind him, her spiritual energy humming, senses razor-sharp for any ambush. The Marauder's map pulsed faintly, showing several frantic points inside the Shrieking Shack ahead. Almost there, Cedric whispered as a weak light and muffled voices reached them. They hurried through the tunnel and burst into the ruined, cobweb-choked interior of the Shrieking Shack. The sight made them both catch their breath. Ron lay slumped on a ragged sofa, face white, one leg twisted at an unnatural angle, staring in terror toward the center of the room. 4 people stood there, wands drawn. Sirius Black looked ragged, gaunt, almost feral, his wand pressed to a short, fat, trembling man on the floor, Peter Pettigrew. Remus Lupin stood between them, pale and flecked with mud and grass, as though he had just fled some fierce pursuit. He held his wand as if to restrain Black while also guarding against Pettigrew. Harry Potter, beside Lupin, pointed his wand at Black, his face a mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief, still not fully able to take in what he'd been told. It's him, Harry. Black's voice was raw with 12 years of rage and grievance. He kept his wand pressed against Pettigrew's temple. He betrayed your parents. He told Voldemort who the secret keeper was. He caused James and Lily's deaths. He's the traitor, not me. He faked his death. He turned into a rat and hid for 12 years. He jabbed a finger at the man on the floor, who was shaking like a leaf. No, it wasn't me. Sirius is mad. He killed them. He'll kill me too. Pettigrew shrieked and sobbed, crawling uselessly toward Harry and Lupin, snot and tears streaking his face, pitiful and contemptible. Sirius, stop! We need evidence. We need to hand him over to the law. Lupin's voice was tired and strained. He seemed to accept Black's words, but his training and reason forced him to try to control the scene. Evidence. Look at this coward. Look at his missing finger. He blew it off himself to escape that day. Black's voice cracked with emotion. A chill swept the shack like a tide. Silent as predators, several Dementors glided in through the broken windows and doorway, drawn by the torrent of anguish and despair in the room. Their presence sucked the warmth from the air. Lupin reacted fastest. Expecto Patronum! A bright, silvery light sprang from his wand, barely holding the nearest Dementor at bay. But his Patronus wavered. He had just endured the full moon and was exhausted, his strength spent. Harry reached for his happiest memories and pointed his wand, but the shock of the confrontation rendered his Patronus a thin wisp of silver that the Dementors swallowed instantly. A numbing despair fell over everyone. Ron groaned in pain. Pettigrew fainted outright. The madness in Black's eyes drained away, replaced by a hollow surrender, as the darkness closed in. "No," Harry cried. Then a clear, commanding voice cut through the cold like a blade. "Expecto Patronum." A brilliant, pure silver-white light exploded into the room. The elegant silver crane materialized, wings wide, its cry a crystalline note that seemed to cleanse the air itself. Where the crane passed, the chill broke like melting frost. The Dementors shrieked and were flung back. Their gray cloaks tangled and billowed as they retreated from the shack. The silver light filled the room, revealing every stunned face. Cedric and Jiangwu stood together at the tunnel mouth. Jiangwu raised her Qinglin wand. A silver radiance flowed from its tip, and the crane circled above her, scattering its luminance like a halo. In that light, her face took on a solemn, almost sacred quality. Her gaze swept the room and settled on Pettigrew. "Peter Pettigrew," Jiangwu said, her voice carrying a strange, penetrating resonance that echoed in the silent shack. "His soul signature matches the rat Ron lost, Scabbers, and it is soaked in lies and betrayal." Her Eastern method of soul verification sealed the accusation Black had made. The shack fell hushed. Harry's wand clattered to the floor. He stared at Jiangwu, then at the filthy man on the ground, and finally at Black. The fury and confusion in his eyes gave way to stunned, belated grief. The truth, made plain by the silver light and the crane's testimony, hit him like a physical blow. Lupin looked at Jiangwu and the crane Patronus with a complicated expression. Relief, pain, and exhaustion mixed on his face. Cedric stood by Jiangwu, wand ready. His gaze on her was equal parts pride and a deeper, stirring emotion. Black stared first at the radiant crane, then at Jiangwu, his gray eyes showing the daze of a man who had finally been heard. With the Dementors driven off, the hatred and injustice that had sustained him for 12 years seemed to fall away, leaving only terrible fatigue and emptiness. Footsteps and spell light streamed from the tunnel entrance. Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape, several Aurors, and a breathless Hermione arrived, faces taut with alarm. The chaotic night in the shrieking shack, under the silver light of the crane Patronus and supported by Jiangwu's decisive soul verification, had at last brought the truth into the open. Dawn had not yet broken, but a new, more complicated day was beginning, with consequences and questions that would ripple far beyond this ruined room. Chapter 34: Time Ripples and Silent Guardian. The truth about the shrieking shack hit Hogwarts like a bomb. Peter Pettigrew was bound by the Aurors with layers of restraining spells, wrapped up like a rice dumpling, and still pretending to be dead. Sirius Black was officially cleared, but 12 years of Azkaban and the injuries from a werewolf attack had left him gravely weakened. He was sent straight to St. Mungo's for treatment. Professor Lupin resigned once his lycanthropy and his delay in reporting Pettigrew became public. He said he had been afraid Pettigrew would lash out and hurt students. The castle buzzed with talk. Jiangwu's dramatic summoning of a Patronus in the shrieking shack to repel the Dementors, and her blunt accusation that Pettigrew's soul was defiled, thrust her further into the spotlight. Admiration was mixed now with a wary reverence and an almost tangible distance. The idea that someone could see through souls felt too strange, too invasive. "Can she really know what people are thinking?" whispered some. "She said Pettigrew's soul was dirty. What does she see in the rest of us?" Others speculated that her solitary nature was avoidant, that she might be terrified of seeing too much. Cedric noticed the change. He made himself a buffer. Quietly placing himself near Jiangwu, he used his easy smile and his prefect's authority to deflect the more fearful questions, framing her gift as a powerful talent instead of a violation of privacy. He accidentally met her in the library and talked herbology. He walked beside her in corridors, ignoring the curious stares. He shared pumpkin pie with her at the Hufflepuff table, as if nothing had shifted. Jiangwu accepted it all with calm. She understood that people feared the unknown, just as the elders of Chixia Stream had once doubted her strong life spirit energy. She kept her routine. In the greenhouse, she tended her spirit plants, watching the sunlight orchid finally produce its first bluish-purple, full bloom under careful cultivation, a jewel-like bud in the sun. She shared the small triumph with Cedric by sending a note with a sketch. He replied with a small bottle of special fertilizer from Mr. Diggory's garden. But beneath the surface calm, currents still ran. Hermione Granger had been unusually exhausted lately, as if time itself were speeding up for her. Jiangwu's sensitive spirit energy let her pick up faint fluctuations in temporal magic, tiny, different ripples that spoke of overuse of a time turner. One late night, returning from the greenhouse, she found Hermione in a dim corridor corner. Hermione's face was paper white. She leaned almost collapsing against the cold stone, fingers clutching a golden, oddly shaped hourglass on a chain, a time turner. Harry and Ron hovered nearby, anxious. Ron still held a large, straining model of a hippogriff. Evidence, it seemed, for Buckbeak's case. I have to. Must go back earlier. Buckbeak. Hermione's voice was faint but determined. You can't use it anymore. You'll kill yourself. Harry hissed, panicked. A calm, clear voice cut through the panic. Stop. Jiangwu stepped out from the shadows. Her gaze fell on the time turner in Hermione's hand. When you force time to ripple, the price is the essence of life, she said, her voice cool and steady. It had the effect of an icy spring, immediately easing the trio's agitation. Hermione's face flushed with a mixture of shame and fear. She reflexively tried to hide the time turner. Jiangwu didn't scold. She reached into her pouch and produced a warm, mutton-fat white jade vial. When she loosened the stopper, a clear, fragrant aroma, like the first light of morning and the concentrated scent of pure plants, spread through the corridor, dispelling its chill. The vial contained her spirit-calming jade marrow, refined from the essential spiritual dew of Ninglu grass, and blended with essences of several spirit plants that soothe the mind and shore up the foundation of the soul. It was rare and precious. Drink, she ordered, holding the jade vial to Hermione's lips. Hermione read the calm authority in Jiangwu's eyes and felt the comforting aura that radiated from the medicine. She hesitated, then took a small sip. Warmth flowed through her limbs and bones. The dizzying exhaustion and the soul-deep tearing fatigue receded like the ebbing of a tide. Color returned to her cheeks. Oh, Hermione stared at the vial, then at Jiangwu, disbelief and relief mingling in her voice. What was that? I feel so much better. Compensation for overexertion, Jiangwu said simply as she took the vial back. Be careful with temporal magic. Each trip back carves a crack in the soul. There was no lecture, only a stated truth. Harry and Ron watched, stunned and grateful, their awe now edged with respect for this Eastern secret remedy. Thank you, Jiangwu, Hermione said, the gratitude and the lingering fear clear in her voice. We only wanted to save Buckbeak. There's more than one way, Jiangwu replied, eyes briefly sweeping to the hippogriff model in Ron's hands. With conclusive evidence, why not use the rules? She hinted at another path. With Hermione's mind, their standing with Professors Sprout and Dumbledore, and a little patience, they could have pursued the official channels instead of risking their lives. Hermione's face shifted as understanding and annoyance at their impatience flickered across it. You're right, she admitted. Jiangwu nodded and said nothing more. She could do what she could, quiet interventions, remedies, a hand to steady friends stumbling in the dark. Then she turned and left, the silent guardian slipping back into the night. As the final exams drew near, the castle had taken on a heavy, subdued air, exam nerves mingling with the uneasy aftershocks of the Black Incident. The defense against the dark arts post lay empty again, and Professor Snape's substitute lessons only made life harder for everyone, while the chilling presence of the Dementors lingered like a permanent shadow. That evening, Cedric found Jiangwu in a quiet corner of the library, bent over a scroll on ancient guardian formations. Do you have time? He asked, his voice carrying a hint of tension and something hopeful. By the Black Lake. The sunset's beautiful. There's something I want to show you. She looked up, met his face softened in the twilight, and nodded. Okay. They walked to the Black Lake. The dying sun painted the sky in brilliant bands of orange, red, and purple. The calm surface of the lake lay like a molten mirror, reflecting the castle's soaring silhouette and the magnificent sky. A cool evening breeze carried the scent of water and grass, briefly lifting the castle's oppressive mood. Cedric did not immediately produce the item he'd mentioned. Instead, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Jiangwu, watching the glittering water. The sunset cast a warm halo around her, tracing the sweep of her lashes and the serene profile of her face. Seeing her like that made his heart pound faster and something like courage rise within him. Jiangwu, he began softly, voice unusually gentle in the hush of evening. "That night in the shrieking shack, thank you, not just for saving us, but for believing me when everyone else was suspicious and afraid, for trusting my judgment and following me into danger." His brown eyes shone with gratitude and something deeper. Jiang Wu turned to meet his gaze. The gold of the sunset burned in his eyes like a kindled flame. She remembered him shielding her, his unreserved trust and protection, and warmth rippled through her chest. "You're worth trusting," she said, quietly, but with weight. Those 5 simple words sent a bloom of joy through Cedric. He took a steadying breath, then carefully pulled a small box wrapped in dark green velvet from his pocket. "This is for you." He extended it, fingers trembling a little. "It's not valuable, really. I just thought it suited you." She took the box. It was smooth and warm in her hand. She untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside lay a brooch of simple, elegant design, a crescent moon carved from pure moonstone, emitting a soft, milky glow. Nestled beneath the curve was a tiny, rice grain-sized glazed seed, crystal clear as if a galaxy swirled within, set in a ring of delicate mithril. It was a subseed, the first and smallest catalyzed from her own breathing earth seed, cleverly cradled by the new moon. The moonstone's cool serenity echoed Jiang Wu's temperament. The breathing earth subseed suggested vibrant life. Together they formed a quietly harmonious piece that married Western gemcraft to an Eastern spiritual sensibility. "I asked Professor Flitwick for a charm to stabilize the gem, then found the best jeweler in Hogsmeade," Cedric said, a nervous edge in his voice. "I hope you like it." Jiang Wu studied the brooch, watching the warm sunset and Cedric's anxious, expectant face reflected in its faint glow. A soft warmth rose from her chest, deeper somehow than the soothing jade amulet she sometimes used to steady her mind. She lifted the brooch, letting her fingers brush the cool moonstone and the tiny breathing earth subseed, feeling the quiet connection between the seed and herself. "It's precious," she whispered, and carefully pinned it to the left side of her robe, close to her heart. The moonstone and the subseed shimmered together in the sunset, casting a subtle, comforting glow that seemed to suit her perfectly. Cedric's smile unfolded at once, a bright, warm thing like sunlight breaking through clouds. Their long shadows stretched across the grass and were doubled in the lake's mirror. "Jiang Wu," he said, watching their reflections side by side, his voice even softer and filled with a solemn promise. "Next semester, I'll be sitting my OLLs. After that, it'll be 6th year, and the newts. Time will go fast. But whatever comes, whether we're in the Hogwarts greenhouse, in my father's garden, or anywhere with good soil and sunlight, if you're willing, I hope we can keep studying magical plants together." He hesitated, then looked at her with a youthful intensity and nervous hope. "Would you always be my herbology research partner?" A breeze stirred the loose hair at Jiang Wu's cheek. She read the clear affection in Cedric's eyes and felt the faint warmth of the brooch against her chest. That same feeling, the small, stubborn shoot that had first stirred in the greenhouse, had pushed through during the Quidditch storm, had warmed beneath the moonlight at the shrieking shack, now stood clear and fully formed before her. She didn't answer at once. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the forbidden forest across the lake, a place of danger that had nonetheless always nurtured life. Then she looked back at Cedric. A gentle, luminous smile came to her face like the first light from a moonstone in the dark. She nodded, voice steady as the earth beneath them. "Okay." The sun sank behind the trees, and the last of the light dyed the black lake a deep gold red. In that soft glow, beneath the watchful silhouette of the ancient castle, 2 young people made an unspoken promise. About the future, about fertile soil, and about the sunshine they both hoped to find. The path ahead might still be thorny, but this quiet, shared moment had planted a seed. It already held the possibility of breaking through the earth. Chapter 36, The Burning Cup of Strange Fire and Thunder in the Badger Courtyard. Hogwarts' 4th year had been set alight by the clamor of the Tri-Wizard tournament. Beauxbaton's glittering carriage and Durmstrang's ghostly ship added an exotic flourish to the castle, and excitement buzzed through every corridor. Yet in a quiet corner of the greenhouses, Jiang Wu cared more about the sunlight orchid that was about to bloom and a parcel her mother had sent. Inside were red sungrass and fire-patterned pepper seeds, plants with a gentle, fiery spirit, and a shard of an ancient fire-gathering talisman. Her mother's letter carried a thinly veiled worry. The magical world is stirring with undercurrents. Old contracts are reawakening. Where there is flame, there may also be ice. The fire-gathering talisman might draw on the earth veins' harmonious yang energy to dispel evil and offer protection. Jiangwu didn't notice anything else until Dumbledore placed the goblet of fire, its blue-white flames licking the air, in the entrance hall and set an age line around it. The ancient, restless magic radiating from the goblet gave off a faint repulsion that her breathing earth seed, tucked in her sleeve, reacted to, an instinctive warning. Cedric Diggory stood beside her, gazing at the goblet with bright pride. "I can't wait," he said. "The Hogwarts champion will be the best, I just know it." But Jiangwu's eyes were sharper than that. Her sensitive perception cut through the invisible ward around the goblet. This was not merely a repulsion charm, but a precise contractual screening enchantment, a trap designed to sift and bind. And then she felt it. A fleeting, cold, viscous flicker of magic, like a snake slipping through water, brushing the age line. It was almost invisible, yet carried a nauseating, disguised familiarity, the shadowed taint she associated with Lord Voldemort. Her chest tightened. She scanned the teacher's table. Karkaroff's oily smile, Madame Maxime's dignified composure, Dumbledore's serene watchfulness. The dark flicker slithered away, cunningly concealed. Who had sent it? Karkaroff? Or the new arrival, Mad-Eye Moody, whose scent of potions and whose unnervingly whirling magical eye always seemed to pry into everything, even people's innermost thoughts? A seed of doubt took root. At the Halloween feast, the goblet began to sputter. First, it spat out a slip for Victor Krum of Durmstrang, then Fleur Delacour of Beauxbatons, and finally, Hogwarts champion, Cedric Diggory. The Hufflepuff table erupted. Cheers rolled like thunder, a shout so exuberant it seemed to lift the roof. The table of Hufflepuffs embraced and screamed. Cedric rose amid the riot, handsome smile beaming across his face as he searched desperately for Jiangwu in the crowd. She sat in the surge of cheering, looking at him. Her expression stayed composed, but inside a quiet circle of pride widened. He deserved it. Behind that pride, though, was a cold worry. The weight of the goblet's contract, the faintly hostile undertow she'd felt, and Moody's ever-rolling magical eye. To be chosen as champion was an honor, yes, but it was also a terrible risk. Then the goblet's flames shifted to an ominous dark red, and it spit out a fourth slip, Harry Potter. Silence dropped like a stone. Then the hall erupted into a noise of accusations, confusion, and malice. Glances full of doubt and hatred stabbed at Harry. His face drained of color. He stood isolated. Even Ron looked stunned and uncertain. "Cheater!" a voice from Hufflepuff, Zacharias Smith, screeched. "He must have used dark magic," others cried. "Cedric's the true champion. Potter's only showing off." Jiangwu felt her brows draw together. She watched Harry standing there, condemned by hundreds, and at the obvious anger around her Hufflepuff classmates. Baseless collective scorn made her uneasy. She stood up. Her voice cut through the din, not loud, but crystal clear. Quiet. She swept a cool gaze over the most vociferous students and fixed it on Zacharias Smith. "Accusations require evidence," she said, each word precise like a drop of ice on a jade plate. "The Goblet of Fire is an ancient artifact bound by powerful contracts. How could Mr. Potter possibly have bypassed the age line set by Headmaster Dumbledore? Which one of you can do that? Who can prove he did?" Faces flushed. The loudest had nothing to say. Jiangwu turned her look toward the teacher's table, her voice lifting with an undeniable question. "Before we blame a 14-year-old, shouldn't we ask what power could so easily twist the rules of the goblet?" Her gaze lingered, whether deliberate or not, on Mad-Eye Moody's spinning magical eye. The great hall grew noticeably quieter. Dumbledore's expression had stiffened into grave concern. Cedric, his excitement put aside, watched Jiangwu with a new look of respect mingled with worry. Her words had doused the fever of blind anger and pointed suspicion toward a darker, deeper issue. Moody's magical eye, for the briefest moment as she spoke, seemed to fix on her and glowed a faint blue. Chapter 37, Whisper of the Golden Egg and Underwater Secrets. Harry Potter's situation took a sharp turn for the worse. The label of cheater clung to him like a leech. He was practically ostracized by the entire castle, except for the Gryffindor Golden Trio. Hufflepuff's defense of Cedric had morphed into hostility toward Harry, and the corridors were filled with malicious whispers and deliberate jostles. Ron's Cold War only added fuel to the fire. One afternoon, Jiang Wu was on her way to the greenhouse when she saw Harry leaning alone against a cold stone window, staring at the gloomy sky outside, his posture radiating exhaustion and loneliness. A few younger Hufflepuff students ran past, laughing, deliberately knocking his books to the floor and making faces at him. Jiang Wu paused. She walked over, ignored the students as they scattered, and calmly bent down to help Harry gather his scattered books and parchment. Her movements were unhurried, with a strangely soothing presence. Harry looked up in surprise. Seeing Jiang Wu, a complex emotion flickered in his eyes. "Thank you, Jiang Wu," he said hoarsely. "No need," Jiang Wu replied, handing him the books. Her gaze drifted to the overcast sky. "When dark clouds hide the sun, it's not the sun's fault." Her voice was still cool and clear, but there was a hint of warmth beneath it. When rules are twisted, the one who seems to benefit on the surface often takes the brunt of the blame. It's unfair. Harry stared at her blankly. This was the first Hufflepuff to show understanding instead of accusation since the uproar began, and it was the usually distant Jiang Wu. A warm current mixed with a sense of relief and grievance stirred in his chest. He pressed his lips together, nodded, and whispered, "I know, but I really didn't." "I believe you," Jiang Wu interrupted, her tone flat but firm. "The strange fire from the Goblet of Fire, the fluctuation of the age line, none of that is something you could have done. Someone is manipulating things behind the scenes, targeting you, and possibly." She left the sentence hanging, but the implication was clear. Someone might be trying to divide Hogwarts and strike at Cedric as well. Harry's eyes went wide. He hadn't expected Jiang Wu to see so clearly. Then, who could it be? Jiang Wu didn't answer directly. Instead, she glanced toward Professor Moody's limping figure at the end of the corridor, his magical eye sweeping the area. "The truth takes time," she said, withdrawing her gaze. "Focus on the tasks and stay alive. Cedric thinks the same." She spoke Cedric's name with a natural trust. Harry's heart stirred at the memory of Cedric's earlier handshake and good wishes. He nodded vigorously, a spark of fighting spirit rekindling in his eyes. "I will. Thank you, Jiang Wu." Jiang Wu nodded slightly and turned to leave. She couldn't do much, just a word of understanding, a small reminder, but that small support meant something to Harry when he felt isolated and helpless. Cedric had completed the first task spectacularly, outwitting the Swedish short-snout dragon with his wit and transfiguration skills and earning a standing ovation. But now the terrifying shriek from the golden egg itself had become a new problem. Hufflepuff's think tank was at a loss. One evening, Cedric came to the greenhouse with the golden egg tucked under his arm, his brow creased. Jiang Wu was there, studying the fiery red patterns that had spread over the leaves of the red sungrass. A fragment of the fire-gathering talisman lay beside her. She appeared to be trying to simulate the rune's energy flow with her spiritual power. "I have no clue," Cedric said with a wry smile. "That sound is pure torture." Hermione suggested it might be related to sound magic. He rubbed his temples. Beneath the champion's calm lay heavy pressure. Jiang Wu set down what she had been holding and looked at the egg. She didn't touch it directly, but slowly ran her fingertips near the shell, letting her spiritual power ripple over it like waves. Apart from the memory of the piercing noise, her sense picked up something else, an impression of dampness, as if the egg were wrapped in water, and a low-frequency, regular vibration. "Water," she said coolly, withdrawing her hand. "The sound is underwater." Cedric's eyes lit up. "Underwater? Of course! Different medium." He became animated. "The prefect's bathroom. I'll try it there now." He scooped up the golden egg and started to leave, then paused after 2 steps and turned back. His face held eager anticipation and a touch of nervousness. "Jiang Wu, could you come with me? Help me listen? Your perception is sharper." There was a subtle meaning in the invitation to the prefect's bathroom. Jiang Wu looked at his sincere, slightly anxious gaze. The soft yellow light of the greenhouse softened his features. She was silent for a few seconds, then nodded gently. "Okay." Chapter 38, Christmas Invitation. In the steamy prefect's bathroom, The giant shell-shaped bathtub gleamed with a pearly sheen. Cedric was the first to slip into the warm water, looking a little stiff. Jiangwu tapped her wand with quiet assurance, and a soft curtain of light rose up, enclosing a corner of the tub to create a private alcove. Behind that shimmering veil, she shrugged off her outer robe and, wearing a plain white undergarment, stepped into the water and watched Cedric through the haze. "Let's begin," she said, her voice drifting through the steam. They both submerged. The ear-splitting shrieks faded. An ethereal melodic song rose, and with it the Merperson's clue. "We took your most beloved possession. You have 1 hour to retrieve it, or it will be lost forever." Cedric broke the surface, excitement ringing through his voice as he repeated the clue. "Merpeople, Black Lake. They're going to take our most important thing underwater. Only 1 hour." He turned to Jiangwu. "What do you think it could be?" Jiangwu surfaced as well. Her wet black hair clung to her cheeks and water droplets ran down her skin. The light curtain and steam softened her usual coolness into something strikingly beautiful, and Cedric found himself momentarily captivated. She wrung water from her hair and met his gaze with steady focus. "Most beloved possession is vague," she said. "It could be a person or an object. Their song is bewitching, dangerous. We have to be careful." She thought of the merpeople in old tales. 1 hour, the Black Lake is enormous and freezing. Cedric's brow furrowed as the weight of the situation returned. He pictured the hazards, the cold, the darkness, Grindylows, the giant squid, and merpeople who were not likely to be friendly. "We need to prepare thoroughly," Jiangwu continued calmly. "Warmth, air underwater, light, a way to keep our bearings, resistance to the lure of their song, and protection against attacks. Spells, potions, or—" Her eyes flicked to the small brocade pouch she had set on the rim of the tub. "Other methods." Cedric listened to her practical breakdown as if she were discussing greenhouse care, and somehow his anxiety eased. With her by his side, even this felt manageable. He took a breath, about to speak, and then noticed something at her throat. The moonstone crescent brooch he'd given her. The saffron seed nestled there seemed to glow softly in the warm steam, close to her skin. An impulse rose in him. He watched her profile in the mist, summoned his courage, and with a barely perceptible tremor in his voice that was still clear, he asked, "Jiangwu, the Yule Ball, will you be my partner?" The water lapped gently, and the steam seemed to hold its breath. Jiangwu paused mid-motion, the droplets at her fingers forgotten. She looked up and met Cedric's tense, hopeful eyes through the veil of light. Images passed through her mind. The quiet growth of feeling in the greenhouse, standing together through Quidditch storms, the silver moon protection at the shrieking shack, and this honest moment in the warm water. She said nothing at first. Her face stayed composed, but beneath that cool exterior, a tide of feeling Cedric shaped, rippled, and warmed the corners that had been frozen. As Cedric held his breath, Jiangwu's lips slowly curved into a clear, luminous smile, like moonlight melting ice. She nodded gently, her voice soft but certain. "Yes?" Chapter 39, Flowing Lights and Moving Heartstrings. As the Yule Ball approached, the castle hummed with sweetness and anticipation. Hufflepuff girls whispered about dresses and dance partners. Even the air felt lighter. Cedric's popularity had surged after he completed the second task, and he'd tried several times to ask Jiangwu to be his partner, only to be put off each time by her absorbed demeanor, her head always bent over greenhouse work or old books. He worried. Jiangwu was not indifferent. She had simply been finishing the final preparations for the evening. Her mother, Isabella, had sent a heavy trunk containing a gown made especially for her. When Jiangwu stepped into the Hufflepuff common room that evening, conversation stopped as if someone had dimmed the lights. She wore a Chixiong Rukun, its fabric dyed in a soft ink-wash gradient. The bodice was moon-white silk jacquard gauze, light as mist, with delicate silver honeysuckle vines embroidered on the collar and cuffs, symbols of eternal life. The skirt vanished from ink black at the waist into a rain green at the hem, like a Jiangnan landscape come to life. The fabric swayed and pooled, ink flowing into mist. Over it, she wore a half-sleeved ink-colored gauze robe whose wide cuffs were edged in gold thread, embroidered with cranes poised for flight. Her dark hair was not piled high, but partly gathered with a translucent jade pin, the rest falling in a silk black waterfall down her back. A tiny forehead ornament, shaped like a soaring blue luan, held a moonstone tassel the size of a grain of rice, echoing the crescent moon brooch Cedric had given her, pinned over her heart. She wore no makeup, and yet she looked otherworldly, like a figure stepping out of an ancient scroll. The whole room breathed differently. Cedric Diggory, dressed in a sharp, dark dress robe, had been talking with friends when the commotion caught his attention. Time seemed to stop as he looked at her. His hazel eyes widened, the butterbeer in his hand tilted unnoticed. The world blurred and fell away until there was only her, like an ink-wash blue luan in the doorway. He crossed the room a little awkwardly, then offered his hand with a solemn sort of earnestness, his voice roughened by nerves. "Jiangwu, you are truly beautiful." The compliment was simple and sincere, truer than any polished speech. Jiangwu met the tall, handsome young man whose eyes held her reflection and smiled, faint and genuine, like moonlight on a frozen lake. She slipped her hand into his. "Thank you. You're very handsome, too." They walked to the great hall hand in hand, the most striking couple of the evening. Cedric's sunlit charm and Jiangwu's Eastern elegance complemented one another and drew many admiring looks. To the waltz, Cedric led carefully. Jiangwu's steps, though not perfect, had a quiet rhythm of their own. Her wide ink-colored sleeves fluttered with each turn, like blooming lotuses painted in ink. They spoke little, but their exchanged glances carried a weight more moving than words. Across the floor, Hermione Granger shone in a soft pink gown as she danced with Victor Crumb, a confident smile on her face. Then Ron Weasley appeared, awkward in an outdated frock trimmed with lace, and cruelly called Hermione a traitor. The light in her eyes went out. She swallowed back tears and fled the dance floor. Jiangwu saw it. After finishing a dance, she told Cedric quietly, "I'll be right back," and slipped away. She found Hermione on a quiet terrace, shoulders shaking. "It's not worth crying over the words of someone who doesn't understand," Jiangwu said, her voice clear and cool, and handed Hermione a plain handkerchief faintly scented with Ninglu grass. Hermione looked up, surprised to see her, and took it. "Thank you. I just didn't expect him to say that. His anger comes from his own narrowness and disappointment, not from anything you did wrong," Jiangwu said simply. "Krum asked you because he sees your worth. You don't need anyone else to validate you." Her frankness had a soothing power. Hermione wiped her eyes and drew a steadying breath. "You're right. I won't let him ruin this." She glanced at Jiangwu's gown, a flicker of envy and admiration in her expression. "Your dress is beautiful." "It was a gift from my mother," Jiangwu replied with a small nod. "Fine clothes please the wearer. That's enough." She returned to the ball, but as she moved back toward the dance floor, something caught her eye. Mad-Eye Moody, not joining the festivities, but standing shadowed beneath a towering Christmas tree. His magical eye whirred and fixed on Harry as he moved across the floor. The look was not the habitual wildness Moody sometimes wore. It was a cold, hunting focus, and a thin, almost imperceptible curl of a smile tugged at one corner of his mouth. A chill went through Jiangwu. Moody's attention to Harry was far too unusual. What on earth was he watching for? Chapter 40, Maze Mystery. After the ball, the final event of the Triwizard Tournament, the maze, became the only thing anyone could think about. The tall hedge walls hid unknown dangers and temptations. Cedric threw himself into intense preparations, researching every magical creature that might appear and drilling ways to disable traps and counter confusing spells. Jiangwu, however, grew more anxious by the day. Professor Moody's behavior was becoming increasingly strange. He always seemed to offer Cedric guidance at just the right moment. The most dangerous thing in the maze isn't monsters, it's people's hearts. When the trophy is within reach, don't forget to watch behind you, and sometimes, for the greater good, sacrifice is necessary. The phrases sounded like seasoned advice, but they carried a cold calculation and a thread of insinuation, as if steering Cedric towards some specific outcome. What worried Jiangwu most was what she discovered by using the Marauder's map and her own stealth, augmented by Eastern breath-concealing techniques, to follow Moody. He would sometimes slip away alone to the deserted girls' lavatory near the 7th floor and remain there for long stretches. What was he doing there? Was it connected to the maze or to whatever had corrupted the Goblet of Fire? She had no conclusive proof, only mounting suspicion, and that was enough to put her on edge. On the eve of the final, she found Cedric again, this time in the empty stands of the Quidditch pitch. The night wind carried her voice clearly. "Tomorrow, in the maze," Jiangwu said. "Don't trust everything Professor Moody tells you." Cedric, still sweating from practice, looked puzzled. "Jiangwu, I know you're worried, but Professor Moody is an experienced auror. His advice is full of direction and implication," Jiangwu interrupted, eyes sharp. "He's guiding you toward a particular outcome. I suspect he's involved in the strange events around the Goblet of Fire." Cedric's frown deepened. He trusted Jiangwu, but accusing a professor, especially one renowned for fighting dark wizards, was a shocking claim. "Do you have any proof?" he asked. "No solid proof," Jiangwu admitted, "but his soul signature is oddly fragmented. His focus on you goes far beyond what's normal, and those solitary trips to the deserted lavatory on the 7th floor, very suspicious." "Cedric," she used his name for the first time, voice edged with urgency. "Believe me, in the maze, besides the obvious dangers, the worst threats might come from those who pretend to help. If you find the trophy, look around carefully, especially behind you." Her worry was unmistakable. The doubt in Cedric's heart shifted. He nodded quickly. "All right, I'll be extra careful, especially about any hints from Professor Moody." He looked at her in the moonlight. Her face was pale and calm, her eyes filled with concern for him. A warm protectiveness surged through him. "Don't worry, I'll come back." Jiangwu reached into her sleeve and took out 2 talismans she had painstakingly prepared, an enhanced heart-cleansing, barrier-breaking talisman, and a Jiamu Life Force talisman, meant primarily for defense and rapid recovery, both charged with a large portion of her spiritual energy. "Keep them on you. They might help in an emergency." Cedric accepted them solemnly, feeling the warm, potent tremor of energy in the talisman paper. Gratitude filled him. Suddenly he stepped forward and, with the awkward sincerity of youth, hugged her. "Thank you. Wait for me to come back." Jiangwu stiffened for a fraction of a second, but did not pull away. The scent of grass and sweat mingled around him, warm and real. She responded with a soft hum.